We also talked about accountability, self-accountability, taking responsibility when you mess up, and we also talked about our word, our integrity, keeping your promises. But so there's just a few things left that we're going to talk about, some ideas in which we can build trust in the Lord's church. The next point that the author brings up is the idea of keeping secrets. You know, trust obviously can't survive without discretion. You know, when somebody shares something with you in confidence, what are they giving you? Are they giving you anything?
Trust.
They're giving you trust. They're giving you something that is something that's precious, something that is valuable. They're actually handing you a fragile piece of information in your care. They're making you stewards of that information. Now, as stewards of that fragile information, what are you going to do with it? You know, Katie?
Well, I don't want to answer that question, but I wanted to comment that not only when somebody tells you something in confidence, they're not only giving you trust, but they are giving you a piece of themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what you do with that, trust, what you do with that information, can either build relationships or it can completely shatter them. We've been studying in the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs, for the most part, you know, I certainly appreciate Will's study that we've been going through, because you know we've been talking about contrasts, and here it is. We have a contrast in Proverbs 17:9. He who covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. And I think the contrast here is absolutely intentional. Obviously, covering an offense does not mean excusing sin or ignoring serious wrongdoing. But what do you think it does mean?
Which proverb was that?
Proverbs 17:9. It means refusing to broadcast faults or for what? For what? Personal satisfaction, maybe. Social capital, social currency. When it comes to relationships, what does love do? It protects. He who covers an offense seeks what? Love. That is the purpose here, because love seeks for restoration. Love doesn't seek for exposure. And again, it's discretion. Discretion chooses to protect a person's dignity. Of course, you know, while honoring the truth. Now repeating a matter, on the other hand, fractures relationships with alarming speed, doesn't it? Gossip, the subject of gossip. Oftentimes, how does gossip disguise itself? Does gossip itself have a covering, or maybe a kind of a patina that we put upon it to make it more acceptable, to make it more palatable? Janice?
I knew this person once was like, "Could you please pray for so and so?" And then she started.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's the thing about gossip, because gossip oftentimes disguises itself as concern. And that's the way you'll hear it. Oh, let me tell you about Brother so. Oh, they need our prayers. You know, I gotta you know, and or we might say something that's like, I just wanted you to know. I think you ought to know. And we gotta be very careful with that. We gotta be very careful with that. And because its effect is what? It's division. Broken relationship, broken trust. And just as we've talked about, once that trust is broken, it's difficult to rebuild. Be careful. If somebody says, this is between me, you, and a fence post, you keep it that way. You keep it that way. And it's just so important because within a congregational family, this discretion that we're talking about, it is essential for growth. You know, what we do with one another, confession, counsel, accountability, all of these things require a safe environment. If something is shared with you in confidence, keep it that way. Keep it that way. You know, with all of the information that is given to you, you look through it through a filter. And that filter is going to be what? That filter is going to be love. Love, because love asks. You know, this information that's given to me, does it need to be shared? Does it have to be shared? And with whom? For what purpose? The spreading of this information, you know, what is it going to promote healing? Is it going to promote healing, or is it just going to spread information? Thinking about these things, discretion, you know, to sum up, trust grows where discretion is practiced. And go ahead.
And sometimes I struggle with you telling somebody something because you want some guidance, and then sometimes that could come off as looking as gossipy too. But in your heart, you knowing that you need some guidance, or you need another person to help you figure these things out. You know, to help this other person. So
Right, like if somebody comes to you in confidence with a problem, with an issue, and they want some counsel, they want guidance, but you don't know how to handle the situation. Right. You know, is there anything wrong with asking the person? You know, is it okay if I talk to some other wise people? You know, I don't have to give anybody details, you know, about, you know, what's going on. Is it okay? You know,
it's
right. Okay. You know, things like that. It's about discretion, and what does James say about the mouth? You know, it's a wily thing at times, and we just got to keep things in check. So keep your secrets, keep discretion. Next point that the author brings up in our book: don't rush to judgment, and of course this is going to be on the subject of restraint. Trust obviously requires respect, and respect is obviously shown clearly where there is restraint. And this sort of restraint, this sequence, if you will, it guards us. It protects us from being careless. It protects us from being careless with our words. It protects us from being careless with our emotions and even our reactions that might fracture trust. You know, when we fail to listen carefully to matters, to situations, you know, oftentimes Oftentimes we tend to do what? We tend to misinterpret motives at times. We tend to misinterpret motives. We tend to misinterpret circumstances, and trust is damaged when conclusions are drawn too early. You know, in the Lord's church, rushing to judgment, as the author has mentioned, it can cause harm. What are some things that oftentimes we rush into judgment on? Maybe a misunderstood comment. Eric?
I have a question about what would constitute gossip. Like,
Oh,
we had an issue a while back about someone had the idea in mind that if you don't give explicit permission to the person that they can tell other people,
mm-hmm.
then it's by nature a secret that you shouldn't, that you can't tell anyone else, otherwise it would be a sin. But what you mentioned before about, this is between me and you and the fence post, that kind of settles the matter in my mind. Like, the onus is on the person telling the secret, right? Or, you understand what I'm saying?
No, I can't.
Well,
Re-ask the question in a different way.
so whose responsibility would it be to know that something's a secret, that you shouldn't be retelling it?
Like for instance, somebody tells you something that, I mean, it's obviously sensitive, but they didn't tell you that it was a secret. I don't know. It just seems to me that it's going to take judgment in those matters. First off, what do we know about gossip? What's the difference between repeating something and it just being flat out gossip? I think what's that?
Hearsay.
Hearsay? Okay. Hearsay is problematic. Hearsay is problematic. But the nature of gossip itself is malicious in nature. There are a number of passages in the Bible that talks about this. Romans chapter 12, or chapter 1, verse 29. Speaking of those Gentiles that are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice, they are gossips. 1 Timothy 3:11, women must likewise be dignified, not malicious gossips. Titus 2:3, older women likewise are to be reverent in their behavior, not malicious gossips. Gossip itself has malice as its motive, and this is what we got to be careful about. Whose responsibility is it to determine whether or not something is supposed to be a secret or something that's not shared? I mean, in my mind, that's going to take judgment. I work in an industry where we handle a lot of different secrets. And it's the responsibility of the person that's handing us the information to determine what level of secrecy is this information, and they'll stamp it. It's up to the one handing us the information to determine what it is that's secret and what it is that can be shared. But let me tell you this: if there's ever a question, first off, if it's ever questionable, that would be my suggestion. Don't share, or maybe ask the person. Is this? There's nothing wrong with that.
Clarify.
What's that?
Clarify.
Yeah, clarify. Is it? This is a serious matter, a serious situation. Is it okay if I share this with others for the purpose of blank? You know, just to underscore the fact that the sharing of this matter is not just a spread of gossip, doesn't have malice as a motive. It's really out of true concern. Yes, ma'am.
I think it also falls in line with who you're telling. Like if I was to say like go to Wendy with something about my health, I know that she would tell the other women like with pure intention because everybody worries about me and I'm not very good at communicating back with them. But if I was to come to her with something very personal, I know she would keep it to herself. So I think it matters on who you're telling, not necessarily. Well, I mean, what you're telling to, but you have to differentiate, like, the subject of what you're telling them, if that's the type of secret that they can keep. If they're capable of keeping that to themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and how is that trust built? And of course, that trust is built on, you know, past interactions, past relationships, and again, this is why it's so important to be trustworthy and with sensitive information. You do not want to be that individual where people say, you know, if I tell so and so this information, I might as well just go ahead and put it on Facebook. You know, telephone, telegraph, tell Steve. You know, you don't want to be that individual. Just, you know, build those trusting relationships that the brethren knows if they give you some sensitive information that you're going to handle those. I mean, again, in my industry, you know, we're given all kinds of information that we have to keep in the company, and there's a lot of things that we have to go through in order to do what to verify our trustworthiness with this information, and to make sure that we're being accountable for that. Wendy?
I would also, similar to what you and Eric were discussing, a lot of times when somebody is sharing something sensitive or personal, they're not emotionally thinking, I don't want anyone to know, or yes, please tell everybody. So I think if they're seeking wise counsel from you, if they're seeking you as a place to unload and to share, I feel like the responsibility somewhat does fall on the ears of the person hearing, because they are in a different place emotionally, and they can say, how much of this do you want me to share? You know, I know Cassie and I've had this conversation, you know, do you want me to share this with the ladies yet? You know, or is this, you want to keep this quiet right now? You know, just you, me, and God kind of thing. And I think that shows discernment on the person that they're speaking to, who is in an emotionally different state.
Yeah.
And can logically think, hey, are we telling everybody yet, or no? We just praying about this privately right now. So I would suggest that to the ears that are hearing, to show that discernment and say, you know, hey, what are we doing with this?
Right.
So.
And you know, certainly this is important for those of us who are very, for lack of a better description, kind of communicative. First Timothy chapter 3 again in verse 11. Women must likewise be dignified, not malicious gossips. Titus 2:3, older women likewise are to be reverent in their behavior, not malicious gossips. You know, we picked on the men last week. You know, all men being liars, and we know that because the Bible says so. But you know, why do you think that Paul with these young ministers would tell them to instruct the women in particular? No, don't be gossips. We know the difference between men and women. We live in a society that tries to tell us there's absolutely no difference between men and women. I'm not up here beating up on women. No, what I'm doing is showing us the fact that women are more communicative creatures than men are, right?
Keep digging your hole.
Huh? No, we know this to be us guys when we get together. You know what are we doing? Yeah, what, you know we're just getting together lying to each other, right? I did a terrible job moving into this.
Okay, you don't have.
But you know, I think that there's a reason. I think that there's a reason why, you know, that Paul is telling these preachers to instruct the women. You know, be careful with things like gossip, because again, you know, we know women, you know,
We're more chatty.
they're more chatty. That's the point. They're more communicative than men are. We're just yeah, obviously. You know, some guys are, you know, will talk your ear off if you let them. But for the most part, we're just getting together and, I don't know, grunting, we're grunting and, you know, lying to each other.
Like, I don't expect any details from you when you tell me a story about some, like, I'll miss a Sunday and I'll say, well, who was sick? I don't know. Like, I have to watch back the announcements. You know, it's just, we're different.
Okay, Eric.
Yeah, James says, if you have a problem, take it to the elders.
Yeah.
And one of the definitions of an elder is they need to have a wife and they need to have family. So family does not negate anything we've already covered. So we gotta be careful.
Mhm.
So any man who, you know, we don't have elders here, but any man who has the responsibility of hearing these things, your family does not negate anything we've already said. So that communication is still in place when you are a husband. Now, the closest relation you're gonna have is with your wife.
Mhm.
So you gotta be careful. You wouldn't come home from work and tell Wendy all of the state secrets that you learned at work. It's still applicable.
Right.
So I think that's what's at play here is family does not negate anything we've already discovered.
Yeah, that's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to remember.
Yeah.
Because like our spouses, we're so close to our spouse. You know, we want to share everything
Sure.
with our spouse. Everything I do at work, it took me a long time with the new job with this place that I work, because I'm used to going home and telling Wendy about my day at work and telling her about everything I did that day.
Yes.
That was a weird transition to go in to tell you. You know, it's like, well, I couldn't tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. You know, to transition into that. But you're absolutely right about that. What do you think would be a safeguard? I think a safeguard would be, again, you know, we were talking about discretion. You know, going to the person, going to the individual that has given us information, and say, you know, is it okay if I share this with my husband? Is it okay if I share this with my wife? You know, so that, what's that?
They're gonna say no.
And if they say no,
They're gonna say no.
then what's that?
If it's a military or national secret.
Oh, okay, yeah, those things. But I'm talking about, you know, our relationship with our brethren. You know, if one of our brethren gives us something sensitive about them, you know.
Would it be a good test to think? Of course, we're supposed to think before we speak, and that's hard to do. But if we do, we could not speak if it's going to hurt anybody's feelings at all.
Absolutely.
One side of the issue or the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, this is
Those
a
little tests.
yes. This is This is about promoting relationship, promoting togetherness. You know, in Proverbs 20 and verse 19, it says, "He who goes about as a slanderer reveals secrets. Therefore, do not associate with a gossip." We shouldn't want to associate with a gossip. You know, unless you're the individual. Maybe you don't like to share information, but you like to hear it. How about that? You know, we're talking about telling secrets. What about is there any responsibility on the hearer if they know that they're getting information about another in the form of gossip? That could be a whole conversation in itself. I'm sorry, Sister Katie, go ahead.
Back to the comment that you were making about where it was talking about the wife of an elder. She is a reflection on him, which as he is on her as well. But if my husband were an elder and he knew I could not be trusted, then he's not going to discuss things with me that might possibly need to be a joint type decision because he's afraid I'll repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
But two, if I knew, if you were an elder and I knew Wendy was a gossip, I'm not gonna come to her with anything.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not gonna tell her nothing.
I probably wouldn't even come to him.
Right, right. Well, and that's what I was just saying, because if he wanted to discuss it with Wendy, she's gonna turn around and repeat it to you, you know, and vice versa. So, yeah, it's not just the one that's talking and the one that's receiving. It can be a wide
Well,
issue.
that also plays into the character of an elder, the qualities, you know, the character qualities of an elder. So if I were a gossip, I would almost think that would
The
disqualify him,
Right.
you know, like,
Right.
so.
Well, just like their children, just like an elder's children can disqualify a man from being an elder.
Yeah. Yeah. My mind was going directly to that. In particular, these qualities, if you will, of elders, of deacons. An overseer, an elder must be above reproach. An elder, you know, shouldn't be an individual who's thought of as one who is a gossip that maliciously shares information. He is to be temperate and prudent and respectable, and respectable, and of course, you know, how does somebody gain that respect? By showing respect to others, and of course that's going to include the sharing of information. He's gentle and peaceable and free from the love of money. And in verse 7, he's to have a good reputation. You know, I think the first part is talking about good reputation within the church, but also outside of the church. This is important too. You know, are we trustworthy with sensitive information, not just with our brethren, but with everybody outside as well? Any other thoughts on this keeping secret? I didn't know that we'd camp on this as long. We've been talking about this next point. You know, don't rush to judgment. I think that James gives us a clear practical command. And James chapter 1 verse 19, but everyone must be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And look at that. Quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. I think that the order matters here. The order matters. What comes first? Hearing. Listening comes first. Then what? Then speaking. Hear first, speak next. And then what comes after that? The anger. The anger part. Anger is deliberately delayed. And this sequence is going to help guard us from careless words and careless emotional reactions that fracture relationships, that fracture trust. When we fail to do the steps, when we fail to listen carefully first, oftentimes we misinterpret motives, and that. Again, trust is damaged by conclusions that are drawn too early. That's the point. That's the point being presented here. Rushing to judgment can create lasting harm, but what are some things that we might misinterpret? And we had talked about misunderstood comments. How about unexplained absences? Unexplained absences from worship might often be misunderstood. Katie?
Well, if anyone is not in touch with that individual,
Mm-hmm.
and so you don't know, so everybody's just automatically assuming why they're out, and that can cause trouble.
Yeah. Sister so-and-so, brother so-and-so, they missed services like 3 weeks in a row. I think I need to take them back room and talk to them.
Well, and there's also a difference between an habitual
That's right.
backslider and one that if I'm not here 3 weeks in a row, somebody better be finding out why not.
Yep.
Because
And somebody will.
But if I come, 4, 6, 8 weeks in a row, and then I miss 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row, and then I come 6, 8 weeks in a row, I'm habitual. I'm not saying that you still don't need to talk to me and find out what's going on, but it's like either you're living your life in sin or you're just occasionally sinning.
Mm-hmm.
There are differences, and what are the reasons for it?
Right. So what should we do? We should find out. Right? Listen. In 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4, love is patient, love is kind, and is not jealous. That love does not brag and is not arrogant, does not act unbecomingly. It does not seek its own, is not provoked, does not take into account wrong suffered, does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices in truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things.
What is that scripture again?
That's 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 7. Love is going to assume the best in folks until facts require otherwise. Obviously, being slow to judge does not mean abandoning discernment. It doesn't mean excusing wrongdoing, but the scriptures tell us that we need to exercise, again, this word keeps coming up, discernment. Exercise wisdom. And again, wisdom is going to listen to reasons before it talks, before it speaks, before drawing conclusions. Truth, and we all want to get to the truth of matters, but truth and patience, they're not enemies with one another. They're not contradictory to one another. They work together. They work together. Yes, seek truth, but do so with patience. And hear people out. When people are heard, they feel that they're respected. And again, in an environment where people feel respected, trust is going to grow. And of course, listening before judging preserves unity, it preserves trust, and restraint. Restraint honors. Restraint honors others. The next point that the author brings up is be forgiving. Be forgiving. You know, every trusting relationship, given enough time, is going to encounter failure. Oftentimes, words are misspoken. Expectations are not met. Intentions sometimes are misunderstood. And what determines whether or not trust is going to survive, it's not going to be the absence of mistakes. But instead it's going to be the presence of forgiveness. The Apostle Paul, he urges believers in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32, be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving each other, just as God in Christ has also forgiven you. Forgiveness, that is a foundational aspect of the gospel itself. Forgiveness. You know, Christians forgive one another, and do we forgive others because they deserve it?
No. No, Christ
No,
didn't.
no. We forgive others because we ourselves have been forgiven through Jesus Christ. This is going to be the motive of why it is that we forgive one another. The phrase "just as God in Christ also has forgiven you" sets the standard. That sets the bar for the motivation. That's where we find the motivation there. Forgiveness flows from this grace that we have received. Without forgiveness, what do past failures ultimately become? Grudges.
And division.
You're absolutely right. Meemaw?
And division.
Division. Yes. What else?
Keeps coming up.
Mm-hmm. Yes. That's right. Without forgiveness, past failures oftentimes become permanent labels. Permanent labels that we put on our brothers and sisters in Christ. And with those labels, relationships are going to stall. And they're going to stall because old wounds just are consistently and continually revisited. Brought up time and time again, and as Katie brought up, bitterness is going to replace trust.
What about when you have that guilt on yourself for something you've done? You've asked for forgiveness from God, and you've been forgiven, and you ask God again for forgiveness for that same thing because you still feel guilty about that.
That's a good point. Why don't we save that for next week? I'd like to add that to this discussion.
How about tonight?
What's that?
Tonight.
Well, we're going to be talking about the sermon tonight. let's save it for next week. We're gonna pick up on this ninth point. I thought we were going to be wrapping up on this chapter, but we ran out of time. Let's talk about that next week. I'm gonna add to that. All right, we're going to go ahead and close it there this morning. Does anybody have anything else to add? Any final comments? Meemaw?
I think that next one, disagreeing in private, is very important. to find a private place to give your thoughts on something that was taught or preached or said, instead of in front of members of the congregation. Even if it's one or two members, it's not private then.
Yeah.
And I see that even with someone just beginning to preach.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's a compliment and oftentimes it's not.
Sure.
But I don't see it done in private as the Bible teaches.
Well,
I see people.
now I've got to add something to that. Oftentimes we don't see it done in private because it's done in private. we don't we don't see it done in private because it's in private. That doesn't mean that it's not happening. However, when it does happen,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
yes, it does happen. And when I have seen disagreements and grievances aired out between brethren in front of the whole congregation, or even worse, during our worship services, like it is an embarrassment.
I see it there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Past.
Yeah.
But I see it in the present too. With not the whole congregation, but if it's more than the person in one person making a disagreement, then it's not private.
Right. I think that this next section is going to be more focused on, interpersonal relationship.